Awesome. Well, let's flip into the metaverse here, into the on cyberspace. So I'm the avocado on the right side of the room. And yeah, first of all, Danielle, thank you so much for doing this with us. This is our second walk and talk. And the first one went so well. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. We've chatted about your art for some time, so to be able to do it in more of a formal space here, I am just really, really, really excited. So I wanted to start on the right side of the room with some of your AI childhood memories pieces. And
Yeah.
again, when I was kind of thinking about how I wanted to set this up, like this series specifically, and just thinking about the power of memories really resonated with me. And I know when you released these pieces, I know we went back and forth via Twitter about how interesting this idea is and like how memories, remembering things properly, does that matter? And how it relates to AI, it just really ties in really nicely. So for the first piece, the one on the right side is called Backyard. And I just wanted to read the description for everybody to kind of kick off the conversation. So Backyard is part of my artificial childhood memory series, an AI generated narrative photo series in which I use text to image technology to recreate and reimagine old childhood photographs and fading memories. It investigates the fallibility of memory and the ways in which artificial intelligence may both jog and alter our memory and the stories we tell ourselves. And I just find this concept absolutely fascinating, and just the way that it ties into AI art is really, it's truly perfect. So just wanted to start things off and just kind of understand how this idea came to be.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, this is such a pleasure. Uh, I am really honored to be here and to be the second one of these. I love this idea. So this series with the artificial childhood memories came about. I've always had a fascination, both like just generally and in my art, with memory. And my dad passed away a little over a year ago, and I was home, preparing with my siblings and my mother for his funeral, and we were going through all these photos to make these like collages for the wake. And it just really got me thinking about how we sort of, mold who we are on our memories. And every time we sort of look at a photo or talk about a memory, we're reimagining it and we're embellishing or adding to it or changing it in that telling. And AI is sort of like a grand scale version of that for like collective societal memory, right? It's all of these images jammed together, and I just thought that connection was really interesting. And personally, I also have a pretty crappy memory, and my memory's getting worse as I get older. My dad, one of his conditions was he had dementia. It runs in my family, so I have a thing about that as well, and about sort of trying to hold on to memories. I started sort of as a whatever quote unquote artist when I was really young. When I was like 8 or 9, I got a camera and I just became obsessed with photography. And so I've been a photographer my whole life. I have tons of photographs that document my life basically from that point on. And in college, I studied it more seriously. I was lucky enough to take a class with Nan Golden, and my sort of project for that class was a series of self portraits, which I'll get into in a second when we talk about that middle picture there. So anyway, I'm grateful that I have all of these photographs to sort of remind me of my past, and as my memories fade. But the photos don't tell the whole truth. Your memory doesn't tell the whole truth, and AI certainly doesn't tell the whole truth. So this series is just playing with all of that. That's a really long-winded answer, but I sort of went through, made a long sort of stream of consciousness list that I would just add to day by day of memories I had from when I was a child. Good memories, bad memories, sort of memories that were only half remembered, things that I wasn't sure if they were real or true, um, things that I remembered but don't have any photographic evidence of happening. And then I just worked on many of those ideas using AI text to image. And yeah, this was one of the outcomes of that. So yeah, I'll pause here in case you want to ask more because I could just talk and talk.
No, I mean that's amazing, and I just love your story. Just starting, you art has been a part of you for some time, and you've been able to find this new tool in AI art to really allow these ideas to come to life. And I mean that's the beauty of AI. Like it is a tool. Like it's nothing more, nothing less. But as an artist, you can use it to unlock things that we didn't have access to before. So, I mean, with this idea of bringing in our memories from our mind, whether they're true or not, like AI is the perfect kind of encapsulation of that. So, yeah, I found this series fascinating from the get-go, and really excited to see kind of where you take it next as the series develops. But we can move on to that middle one, that self-portrait. I know you've done a lot of self-portrait work, but
Yeah.
really curious how you think of it from an AI lens.
Yeah, so that middle one is from a series that actually came before the childhood memory series, but is very related, called Artificial Self Portraits. And um, it was based off of, I used text to image, but I also used image inputs of photographs that I had actually taken over 20 years ago while I was in college for this class, self portraits of myself that I took with a manual camera and a tripod and a timer. And so it was sort of again, it was a lot about memory, but it was also about the idea of multiple selves and how we have many sides of ourselves, and um, kind of presenting this version of myself that is multiple people. And you'll see if you look at some of the other works in this series, like the girls don't all look the same; they don't look just like me, and that's kind of the point. It's sort of like it's me, but it's not me. And in this case, I was using uh, source images that were actually my photographs, but then I was trying to evoke certain emotions or states of mind that were really sort of prominent in my memories of my sort of late adolescence and early, like young adulthood. Sort of late teen years, early 20s. Yeah, so that was what that project was about. And again, it touches a lot on this whole thing of AI and collective memory. And my one of my aims was to try to make these women have expressions and and emote in ways that people could connect with. And I got like many messages and DMs from people that made me so happy because they were like, oh, like I feel like I knew this girl, or I feel like I was this girl. And that was very much what I was trying to do with this. It's very personal to me because they're all sort of based on me, but I also wanted it to be sort of universal in a way. So yeah.
I love that. No, that's amazing. I think people DMing you to kind of tell you about that connection is what it's all about. So I love to hear that happened as well.
Oh,
And
totally. Yeah. And it happened a lot with the childhood memories ones as well. And that was so touching to me. Like people who would say, oh, that setting reminds me of like the house I grew up in, or that situation is so, resonant to me for this and that reason. And yeah. And like, again, they were all, loosely based on my memories, but they're not like straight, exact versions of me or what happened. And that's intentional. So, and the one beside the girl in the center is called Bus Stop, and that's another one of these childhood memory ones, and from that same series. And that is one that I minted on Tezos. All the rest were on Ethereum, but I started in Tezos, and I wanted to have something from that series, like a bigger edition that my Tezos supporters could collect. So that's that work.
that's awesome. And I mean, just us as humans, we have so many shared memories, and like for how different we all are, there's still a lot that the Venn diagram overlaps quite a bit. So I think with this series especially, I mean, like we can all see ourselves in one of these, one or another. Like your cross country meet one, like I ran cross country, like I totally get the face that she was making there. So no, I totally resonate with this
Yeah.
series and wanted to make sure that we focused on it. And one thing that I did want to ask you for creating AI art, and I've dabbled with it a little bit. Frankly, haven't spent as much time as maybe I want to.
Mhm.
But how do you know when you're done with the piece?
That's a great question. It's like it's kind of a gut feeling. And part of what I love about AI is the mistakes or the weird things or the not quite right things. And so I tend to not try to fix those things. And so for me, it's a matter of is it conveying the story that I want to tell, the emotion that I want to express? Does it have a nice composition? But it doesn't need to be a perfect composition, if you know what I mean. Like I know some people do a lot of editing. I mint a lot of my AI raw, like just sort of what came out of multiple sessions of prompting. I'll maybe upscale it or change the contrast or something like that. But I don't do a ton of editing in general. With these, I did very little, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, it's a little bit of a gut feeling, and sometimes it's like you're going through and you're doing all these iterations, and you're tweaking the prompt, and you're doing this, and you're this and that, and then something comes, and you're like, oh wow, okay, this is it, and you might have to keep working and go a little further, but you just kind of know. And there are also times where it's like completely unsuccessful, and I'm trying to do something, I'm trying, and I'm just not getting anything that's there. And so I just kind of like stop and either come back to it another time, or maybe I just don't pursue that line. But the great thing about AI is it also will sometimes give, it's like it's a uh, I don't know. It's a relationship, right? It'll sometimes give me things that I didn't expect, and then that will point me in a sort of different direction, or I'll see that and think, oh wow, it's catching something that I wasn't even really asking for, but that's what I want. So it's when those moments happen, it's really magical.
That's incredible. And when you're just talking about that, that just brings up, like, in a lot of interviews that I've read about, like, generative artists talking about like a bug in their code that then totally shapes the future of the project. So I
Yeah.
think just like having that open mind and allowing the art to take you where it needs to go and not necessarily forcing it to go a certain way, I think is a really beautiful thing. And with AI, just like not knowing the black box that the text prompt is outputting, I think that relationship and kind of like that duet between human and not human is just a really interesting concept. And like I don't think perfection like should be what we're shooting for. Like as long as the art is resonating and as long as it means something to you and is kind of pushing all those buttons, I think that's what we're really shooting for. So yeah, thank you so much for walking us through those three. And just kind
Sure.
of taking a stroll to the right, let me move my avocado. I wanted to make sure that we spent enough time talking about the muses here. So if we all go to the back wall to those four amazing pieces, we can start chatting about those if you don't mind.
Yeah, of
So
course.
Muses is one of my favorite collections. I know it just celebrated its first birthday not too long
Yeah.
ago, which is just
Can't
crazy
believe it.
that it's already been a year. But this project, there's 500 unique portraits. This came out on Emergent Properties, MProps. This was a generative AI project and one that I was really, really excited about, and one that I just continue to get super excited about whenever I look through and just kind of going through all 500 outputs. It was truly a joy. So I wanted to choose four pieces that kind of encapsulated the the whole algorithm. Obviously, there's so much to choose from, but I thought these four were some of my favorites that I wanted us to kind of take a look at and chat through, but wanted
Great.
to back up a little bit and just for this project, the AI mashups between the artists that inspire you, artists that you wanted to kind of bring into these pieces has allowed me and I'm sure others to do so much research about these artists And I've been able to learn so much about art and about art history because of this project and because of your AI mashup. So,
Oh,
first of
I
all, just
love
wanted to
that.
say thank you
That makes
because
me so happy because
it's
in
been a
addition to
great
being an artist, I'm a big art history nerd. I studied art history as well in college, and I worked at MoMA for many years, and I just like when people tell me that they discover an artist, whether it's like a generative or AI artist, like someone in this Web3 world, or an artist from like the deeper past, if they discover them through me, it's like the makes me so happy. I'm like walking on air. So thank you. That's great to hear. Um, yeah, so the Muses, it was up until then, I had only ever done sort of curated AI outputs that I would, put out there and mint. And this was a big challenge for me because, it was a series of 500. It was using Stable Diffusion, which I had until that point never used. I'd always just been using Midjourney with my AI mashups and my earlier work. And so I had to learn Stable Diffusion, which was, months of just like playing with it and kind of, trial and error and figuring it out. And then I also had to come up with, a series of prompts, a series of image inputs, a series of probabilities and things for the algorithm that I was happy enough with that I could release this into the world and not know what the 500 final pieces would look like. And I am a huge control freak. It's something that like has gotten better as I've gotten older. Having kids certainly helped with that because you can't control them at all as much as you want to. Um, but this project, like the question of how do you know when you're done? Like that was really hard for me with this because I did test runs and the MProp's team was amazing, helping me through all the way. And like as we got towards the end, like they were like, is it ready? It seems ready to us. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, there's going to be some that I don't like, I think. And I had to kind of just come to terms with that and come to peace with that. And in the end, when I look at them, I love all of them. Like even the weird ones, even the ones that I tried to prompt against, and as we talk through these four, like, a lot of them have traits that are things that I tried not to have in the muses, but I knew would come out like to a certain extent just because of where the AI software was at that time. And those are some of the ones that collectors love the most, like, and I've come around on them as well. So anyway, let me know where you want me to start, but that's kind of like an intro, I guess.
no, that's awesome. And I see Ira's in the crowd. So, yeah, thank
Hi,
you
Ira.
for all that you guys do at MProps. It's an awesome platform. For those that haven't checked it out, I highly recommend after this to take a look. They're doing a lot of really innovative stuff on the AI side. So make sure you take a look after. But for the four that I picked out, I think the most striking one when I was going through is this like pure yellow one. And just
Yeah,
from doing research on like Gustav Klimt and just his portraits that he's done, like I thought it was it was just phenomenal. And just like
yeah,
that color yellow was so nice. And I find it very interesting with the ones that have like two people in it. So it's
yeah.
almost like a harmony between the two, especially the one next to it as well. But I would love just to hear kind of your thoughts on these four and kind of how, like, in the scope of the muses, like how, like, what do these mean to you?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with the one you were talking about with the yellow golden background. Minnie, she's called. And you're right, she has Gustav Klimt as her sort of inspiration. And then some of the artists that were in the prompt, which I call collaborators in the traits, are Edward Hopper, Saul Lewitt, the designer Elsa Schiaparelli, and then Klimt again. And I think the double Klimt, the fact that he was in there as sort of the inspiration, and then also in there again as a collaborator, made it even more sort of obvious in this one that is an inspiration. And the double person thing, and you'll see in another one like a couple faces, and then the two women, that those are all things that were like, I tried very hard to negative prompt away. I was like, no double heads, no two women, no no this, no that. And they came out anyway, and some of them came out in such beautiful ways. Like, I love that one with the two women sort of back to back and the flowers. And it's one of those things too that I feel like is a little bit of a timestamp for AI of that moment. If I did the muses again now with the most recent models, with my same prompts, you wouldn't get all of those quirky things, because like the models have gotten so much more quote better, more realistic. They're better at interpreting what you're saying and what you want and what you don't want. But I'm glad that these exist, and that those quirks came up, and I knew they would. When we did our test runs, I saw those things coming out, and like I said, I came to peace with it and was sort of like, this is part of what this technology is right now. And so I liked having that sort of marker. And the one with the woman who's the artist, and she has the easel, that is a really rare one that I was so happy to see. You'll see a few others of women who appear to be artists because they have like an artist palette or they're holding a paintbrush. Those aren't things that I tried to get. Those were happy, not accidents, but um, having some of these women not just be muses, but appear to be artists that are, either painting themselves or painting other women. I really loved that, and actually, I then went on to explore that in another series I did for a show called Reflections that was curated by Adam Berenger from Tender and was on view in New York at Art Matter. That series was called Artists as Muse, and it was all paintings or AI generated paintings of women artists painting themselves and how they depict themselves and their gaze versus like being a muse to a male artist. So it was those that kind of inspired me to do this whole other project. So that one is very special to me. And what I love about the four you chose is like they're all so different, and that was something I was trying to do with the project. Was I wanted a lot of variety across, because I knew like, 500 is a lot, I don't want these all to seem the same. But I wanted them all to also feel cohesive as a series and as a project, which I think they do. So yeah, I don't know if you have any more questions or anything else you want me to get into with these, but I love the four you chose.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think what you just said there sums up this project so well. Like, they all have their own life and they all have their own name more specifically, but they're also very cohesive in kind of the story of the muses. So I
Yeah,
think,
and just
yeah,
a note about the names, and to give another shout out to how wonderful the MProps team is to work with. I was very adamant that each of them would have their own name and that no name would be duplicated, and they made that happen for me. So I really appreciate that. It was I with I'm not a coder, but apparently with code, a lot of the variables and the things that I was putting in, like it would by chance, happen again. And to make it so that the names wouldn't repeat, they had to like sort of do something special. So I really appreciate that they did that for me.
that's amazing. I love that. And just to go back on one of the things that you were saying about just like AI art as it stands when you did this versus where it's at now, and like that idea of chasing perfection that we were talking about in the first area, like I think if these were perfect, like it wouldn't be as powerful. Like that one, the second from the right, like those two women are holding hands. Like
Yeah.
that's just like a perfect accident. And
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
those are the types of things where like the women on the right are dancing and like those
Yeah.
lines are like flowing. And it just like I don't think that would happen necessarily if like the technology was too good. So again, I'm a proponent in perfection is not necessarily the best art. So
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that I specified that again.
Yeah, and it's funny because since this project, I have really embraced long form generative AI. I've done, I think, four other projects on MProps. and all of them, the final works are generated at the time of mint, so I don't know what they're going to look like, and I love it. I love sitting there and watching them reveal. I love, seeing things that I kind of expect, and say, oh, that's beautiful, that's what I was going for, and then seeing things that I didn't really expect and saying, oh wow, that's amazing, like where did that come from, so I think it's such a fun um, and like of the moment way to make art, and I'm just, yeah, I'm here for it. And people have been doing a lot of really cool stuff with this long form generative art on mprops, and so beyond just like making my own things there, I'd love to see what other people have created. And yeah, it's, I can't speak highly more highly of what's going on over there. It's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think just long form across the digital art world is just such a fun and exciting tool that can be used, especially with blockchain technology. It really is a perfect use case for it and just makes it so exciting to be part of the creative process. Like my first piece of digital art was generative art. So like clicking on the button, like clicking mint, being a part of that creation, and like you see the artwork before even the artist does. So it's a
Yeah.
really special moment. And I think just, yeah, long form AI generative, it's just really, really cool to be a part of the process, and like you helped bring the project to life. And like that's really special.
Yeah, no, totally. And when I got into this whole space as a collector, before I started putting work out there and on the blockchain, I totally, got obsessed with FX hash and generative art, and becoming a part of that process. And you do somehow, or I do, I feel more tied to things that I mint in a lot of times, because I can remember the moment that I minted it and where I was and sort of like what was going on in my life. And I don't know, like then it like some nostalgia or something is like tied to that work above and beyond the work itself, and the aesthetics and whatever you feel about it. So I hope that happens to people with my work as well.
No, absolutely. And I think with generative art and like flipping through my FX hash collection, it's really a diary where
Yeah.
like you're going back in time, you're like, I remember like this day, what was going on. And like again, it just creates these wonderful memories, and it's just perfectly intertwined with like this crazy Web3 world that we've found ourselves, art, technology, and it's really a beautiful combination. So yeah, I'm glad that you think similarly. I did want to ask on just the concept of embracing randomness. I mean, you mentioned that you're a lifelong control freak. So like, at what point did you allow yourself to like just give into it? I'm sure it was at some point during the muses, probably pretty late in the process. But like, how did you come to grips with just allowing it to kind of do its thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was very late in the process, and I finally just had to sort of be like, you know what? I could do this and tweak it and do it and like and drive myself crazy, and I might make it worse. And I had a lot of encouragement from the lovely MProps team that they thought it was in good shape. We had done a lot of tests, and I was just kind of like, all right, I got to rip this band-aid off. It's now or never. I was super anxious and super nervous, and I remember we were talking about pricing and stuff, and I was like wanting to price it super super low, like much lower than what it ended up at, because I was just like so uncertain that if like what if collectors don't like these, like what if I don't like them, like but since doing that, it's become a lot easier. I mean, there's still a little bit of anxiety, when you drop a project and you don't know what the outcomes are going to be, but it's nothing near the level of the muses. So the muses was definitely, it was therapeutic for me for sure.
I can completely understand that because I mean, for M props, this was definitely one of the first long form on the platform. So I'm sure there's just a lot going on that side, and just
Yeah,
a
it was
lot of
really early.
firsts. So it just makes it a
Yeah.
lot more exciting.
Yeah, it was early. I think it was the first project that wasn't by one of the founders. I was like the first non-founder
It
artist.
sounds about right.
Yeah. And so like, things were very much super, super still in beta, and like in flux and like, being worked on their end. And I, like I said, was like really just still, figuring out along the way how stable diffusion worked. So yeah, there was a lot of anxiety there. And I feel like everything I've done since has been a lot less like, anxiety ridden for me personally. But yeah, there's still always going to be that little bit of like, okay, I have to let this go into the world and like, and see what happens. And again, like I'll relate that a little bit back to parenting, right? I mean, you have to, you do your best, right? And then you have to just sort of, like let the kids be who they are, and like you have to let the mints be what they'll be.
I think that's a pretty good analogy there. I'm not quite at being a parent yet, but I'm sure at one point I'll understand that. Awesome. And while we're still talking about the muses, and again, just mashups being such a big part of your AI journey so far, like
Mhm.
what got you into exploring these mashups in the first place?
Yeah, so that was the very first thing that I started playing with when I, um, you know, started using an early version of Midjourney. I just thought, oh, it would be interesting to see what it would be like if, like, this artist from this time period and this artist from this completely different time period with very different styles worked together and collaborated. Like, what would that look like? AI can make that. Like, that's a thing that could never happen in the real world, but AI can imagine it. So I just started playing with um, different artists that I admire, artists that I've studied, and seeing what would happen. And a lot of the, the mashups that I tried, like, were terrible or didn't work or whatever. But the ones that I thought, oh wow, this is something special. Like this is something that neither one of these artists could create or would have created, but together maybe they would have. Those are the ones that I started minting. And I just kind of put it out there because I was having a lot of fun with it, and I thought, you know what, like, I'm just going to put these out there and see if people like them, and if they don't, that's fine. I'll still keep, playing with AI because I'm really enjoying exploring it. And people started collecting them to my great surprise and pleasure. And it's something that I still do. These AI mashups, I still add occasionally to that series. And it's very much at the heart of the muses. Sort of the muses have more than two collaborators involved in terms of the artists that are in the prompts and in the images, the image to image prompts. But yeah, I love the idea of collaboration. I've collaborated with different artists myself, and I love when two creative brains come together and have these very different experiences and these very different skill sets, but can work together to make something that's sort of like greater than 1 + 1 = 2. So that's sort of what I'm trying to do, using AI as a tool. And yeah, it has fed into other series, and the way that I think about things and the way that I prompt. But yeah, that was the very first set of pieces that I ever minted. And yeah, I love when people tell me, oh, I saw this work of yours and I liked it, and I hadn't heard of one of the artists, and I did some digging and I love them, and like I'm so happy that I know about them. And yeah, it just makes me really happy when I hear comments like that.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first reaction. So I remember when you started minting some of those first mashups, and a lot of the names like I have not heard of before. And like some of the styles, I'm like, this is just a crazy style. Like, let's check out the artist. And then you go through their catalog, learn about them, and then go back to your piece and be like, okay, this makes a lot more sense now. Like, I
Yeah.
can totally see that. So yeah, I mean, I've always appreciated that art history lesson. And I mean, you mentioned that you've been involved in the art world for some time. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you've seen so many different art forms take shape. Like, what made AI art really click for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, first of all, I'll start by saying that I am not like a tech savvy person at all, which, like, I mean, people might think, oh, that's funny. Like, you use AI, which is a pretty cutting edge thing or whatever. But, like, I'm Generation X. I did not grow up with like computers and stuff really in my life until, I was sort of in college. And even in college, like, we didn't use email that much. It was a thing we had, but we still like sort of would just leave voicemails and things, you know. So all that to say that I didn't come at it with a like sort of ooh like let me investigate this technology kind of mentality. It was more like, oh, this is an interesting, you know, new art tool, and I think it can do cool things that you can't really do with paint and you can't really do with a camera, and let me see, you know, what I can do with it, and how it, like I came from like a more conceptual place, I guess. And I think one thing that's wonderful about it is that, you know, anyone, not anyone, I mean, you have to have ideas, you have to have a vision, but like you don't need to have a giant studio and money to buy canvases and paint. You don't need to have a dark room, you don't need to you know, have all of these things. You really just need some software and a computer and you can create. And you know, this is kind of like dark, but um my as my dad was dying, he was in hospice, and I had my computer with me, and there's a lot of time where you're just like sitting around, you know, and you know, he's sleeping or whatever, and I was just like doing a lot of creating on my computer. And like if I were a painter only, or if I were just like doing, you know, photography or whatever, I wouldn't have, you know, been able to have an outlet during that time, which was like a really rough time. So um I love the sort of accessibility of AI, and I love the sort of endless possibility of AI, I guess, is my answer to that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think just like any new technology, I mean, it just opens so many new avenues, especially for really creative people. So, I mean, anybody now has access to AI, like anyone can create anything at any time, but it's still like you need to think of the idea and then bring that idea to life. And like that is still a difficult skill that not anybody can possess. So, I mean, as time goes on and just AI art becomes just way more, I guess, just way more art is created. Like there's still
Mhm.
going to be the special collections because of the concept behind it, not necessarily just again like how perfect does something look. That's not necessarily yeah what makes art beautiful. So I love that. So we can go ahead. I wanted to make sure that we have enough time to hit on all three of the different collections that we have. So I'm going to waltz on over to the left side of the room to our Lonely Landscapes. Again, this is another project that you released on Emergent Properties. And this one, unlike the other two, isn't. I picked three pieces, two of which have people in them, but
Yeah.
this one doesn't necessarily revolve around people per se. So I would
No, it
love just to
doesn't.
hear kind of how you thought about this project and how it was kind of a steer in the different direction from some of the other projects that you were working on before.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, this project very intentionally was not really supposed to have any people in it. And so the two you have with people are kind of rare. And again, I knew that I would get some with people because as I was testing, like people would just pop up. You know, humans like humans in their imagery. And so, like, um, the AI is always trying to like put people in there. But this, yeah, this came from, so I, in addition to when I was in college, doing like self portraiture and also a lot of like portraiture of other people and my family and friends. I've had a lifelong interest in the built landscape. I took a few amazing classes in college with a historian named John Stilgo, and he writes specifically about like the built landscape in America. And I'm just really fascinated by sort of like empty and abandoned and sort of um, rundown places. I grew up in sort of a blue collar town in Massachusetts that used to be a mill town back in the day. And when the mills in my town actually made hats and carriages. And so when men and women stopped wearing hats and cars replaced carriages, the factories just sort of like became abandoned and my town became sort of poor. And so I grew up around these like empty, you know, factories and mills. And I've just always been like sort of gravitated towards sort of desolate landscape imagery. And when I was taking photos, sort of in college, and before that, even when I was a teenager in my town, I took a lot of photos that look kind of like these. And I took a big road trip when uh, I lived in California for my first job out of college, and I hated it, and I was sad and miserable there. And so I moved to New York City. I did a road trip with my boyfriend at the time, and so this project, it has also a little bit of like a road trip photography vibe to it. And if you see the like the traits, if you go to the whole project, um, they the features, the traits are lost in, and then there's like suburbia, the American West, small town America, whatever. And then at is the time of day, like noon, dusk, whatever. Um, and this project actually came a little bit out of a one project I did, an object called Postcards from the Edge, that was imagined moments from a lonesome road trip across the US. And that was, I was working on these and made the series of very specific one-of-ones. And then I thought, well, what if I do this as a generative series, and refine it, and make it, make it different. But yeah, that's kind of how this came about. And I still love, sort of landscapes and empty buildings, or decrepit buildings. And I'm actually working on a series right now of abandoned malls. That's my current landscapey fascination. But yeah, that's what this project was about. And the people, again, like, weren't supposed to be there, but in the instances where they came out, I do really love them. There are a few in particular with people in them from that series that I think are so good. So I'm, again, really happy that the AI wasn't perfect enough to totally listen to me and keep people out of all of them.
I love that. Yeah, no, I think this project, as you talk about it more, just makes a lot of sense, and kind of like your overall catalog of just how important like your memories, and like kind of you thinking back on like some of those, yeah, special occasions or things that really pop out, and then how can I imagine that like in an AI series or in AI work is really fascinating. And I mean, that's really the through line through so much of your work, which I find really, really, really cool. The one all the way on the left, when
Mm-hmm.
I was going through it, was just very, very striking to me. I mean, to me, in the way that I read this one, because like he's in a car, but
Yeah.
he's sitting on a beach, and like my thought is that like he's sitting on a bench like by himself, but he's just like imagining when he was younger, like in his car, like how things were back in the day. And like now, I mean, it's a lonely landscape, so maybe his spouse passed away, he's by himself, and it just like really wrecked me the first time that I
Oh,
saw this one. And
oh,
it's, I mean, again, like you just create these stories
yeah,
for
yeah.
these
I love
people.
that.
And it's just, again, a really, really interesting thing when you like take a seat. I was just going through all of these outputs, and like this one just like stared at me, and I was staring at it for probably like 5 minutes, being like, oh my
Oh,
God. Like I was recently listening to a podcast about Rick Rubin and when he
hmm.
worked with Johnny Cash on his Hurt cover. And like this just like totally reminded me
Oh,
of that song, and like him singing it like towards the end. So yeah, that was really, really special output. So I needed to make sure that we had it there, and we chatted about it.
thank you. Yeah, I love that one. I love how intense he is, and like the hair is sort of blowing like on the sea breeze, and like, again, these aren't things I specifically asked for, but it comes out of the prompts. I'm using a lot of different references, and the seaside is one of the locations I use. My town wasn't right on the seaside, but it was like adjacent to the seaside, so I spent a lot of time at the beach and growing up, and yeah, no, I love that you have that whole story, and like the woman in the middle too. Like, I have a whole story about her. Like, she has seen some shit, that woman, and like she's in this like sad bar, and she's got like 3 drinks, and I don't know what's going on with the multiple clocks or whatever above the window. Like, there's there's just like all of these stories that you can tell, and that's something that I really like about these types of sort of built landscape, photos, is people tend to fill in the narrative with, their own experiences, or other, like, other things, media they've consumed, books, like movies, whatever. They'll tie it, music, as you mentioned, they'll tie it to different things. So yeah, I love hearing your story about that, man. That's so lovely.
Yeah, and I mean, I think creating the stories for the people or for the places, especially with AI art, since like AI, it's all made up, so like might as well continue that and create like a whole story around it. So it's just kind of a fun thing that I haven't really seen with some other art forms nearly as much as AI art, especially when it throws in just kind of like those random things like, are all three of those drinks actually hers?
Right,
Did
right.
AI just like replicate her one drink three times? But it's like, I've had three drinks in front of me before. It's happened
Yep,
before.
yep.
So it's
Yeah, and like that
it's
empty chair across from her, like, was she with someone? Has that person left? Was nobody there? Was she waiting for someone who didn't show up? Like all these questions. And it's again, like, if I were just, say, I was doing photography old school, like I used to do, and I was like at a bar and I'm taking photos, like, I probably, if someone had like those three glasses in front of them, I might be like, oh, that's a little weird. Like, maybe oh, I don't want to interfere, but I wish there was only one glass, But in the end, like, one of the great things about this piece is the three glasses. So that instinct would have been wrong. So I love that the AI will sometimes force things that uh, people with their need for whatever, symmetry or perfection or whatever, myself included, might not have done. The AI brings that out, and again, with these generative, long form generative projects, you can really explore that and have a lot of fun with it. So I will be doing more for sure of those.
amazing. Because
Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes the right answer is not the intuitive one. And
Yeah.
as a human, it's like, I think I know what's right. But then the AI, especially in long form, it's like, nope, this is what's going to happen.
Right, right.
And it's out there in the world, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. And like I said, like I do sometimes go back through some of these projects and relook, and ones that I like initially was sort of like, oh, I don't know about that, or I had like a strong negative reaction to, like, I'll come around and be like, oh, that one might be actually one of my favorites, So sometimes it takes me as the human some time to like internalize and process these projects, and also be able to see them as a whole, right? And see like the span of the different pieces, and how they kind of work together and complement each other in their differences. So yeah.
I love that. And you were mentioning music. Do you listen to music when you're creating art?
I if I do, it's generally music without words, because prompting so much is about words, and I find that if I'm listening to music, like, I'll start singing out loud, or I'll, like, just get the lyrics into my brain, and that can be distracting. So I'll listen to more, classical music, or things that don't have words. But I do. Listen to music a lot when I walk. I go on these nature walks, which I document on Twitter, so a lot of people know about them. And I either listen to music or I listen to podcasts. And I actually get a lot of ideas when I'm walking. And so somehow, like, I can have ideas if there's music with words, but it's hard for me to be like prompting and playing in the AI software if there's words, if that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. And I am a firm believer that the best ideas come while walking.
Oh,
I've been going
totally.
on a lot of city walks, especially when it's been nice out, and just, yeah, been plugging in podcasts, music, or just thinking, just like listening to my own thoughts, and like just my brain just runs wild. And like a lot of the questions that I've asked you here today is just like prepping for it. It's like I just think of ideas, and it's like, huh, I should ask Danielle that. I think this would be a really interesting question. One of those questions, this came to me last week, and just like, in a world where technology just makes it so easy to connect to other people, like, how do you stay connected to yourself and your artistic craft?
Oh, that's a good question. And it's hard because I there is this thing about being an artist in Web3 where you feel a pressure, and there is a real tie to success, with how much you engage online. And so, like, in addition to working on your art, you need to be on Twitter and Instagram and doing these things. And that can be very, very distracting from the creative process, right? So, it for me, like, I am always struggling to find a balance of like making sure that I'm present enough in that. And that also is, to be honest, a lot of my social life. Like, these people are my friends, like, but I need to also have time, like sort of quiet time away from that sort of chaotic online stuff, to work on my art, to think about my art, um, to just think, to just be a little bit, reflective. And between all of the need for Twitter and Instagram and all these other things that are popping up, and like the fact that I have kids and I have a job, like it is a challenge. But it's super important to me, and it's been something that, like, this sort of creative revival in midlife has actually, been a real lifesaver for me in a lot of ways. So I know I need to make the time for it, and I find it somehow.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult out there to balance everything and just getting like swept up in what's going on. There's always something new happening, but I think
Totally.
just all the artists just slowing down, just really focusing on the work and just trying not to have too many deadlines
Yeah.
could be helpful. And
Yeah.
I mean, just like trying to carve out, if that's 30 minutes a day, if that's an hour a week, whatever it is, just to have for yourself, I think is very, very important for the creative process, like you're mentioning. And I mean, things are never going to slow down, it seems.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's ever more important to really kind of stick to that and have those blinders on so you can really focus on like the artist's own craft.
Totally. And I'm a big fan of like trying to like multitask or kill two birds with one stone. And so, like, for me, like, my nature walks, it's good exercise, and it's a time where I'm like alone and I can think. So I try to do things like that if I can. And, like, I think another, like, huge important thing for me, and I think for most creative people, is, you know, going and seeing art in person and reading literature and watching films and all of that. And I try to involve my kids in that a lot, because that, again, kills two birds. Like, I'm spending time with them, but I'm also going to see art with them, or I'm taking them to a movie, or we're all reading together. So yeah, I think, you know you got to be creative about finding ways to get these things in. And for me, it's all about trying to find opportunities to multitask, and sort of feed my soul, but also, like, do the things that I need to do in my life.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great strategy and one that I try to do as much as possible. I think for the walks, like getting exercise plus thinking creatively or learning, whatever it may be, like those are going to be the nuggets that maybe will affect a future project or that's like the missing piece and something that you've been thinking about. So I think all of that is super important for the creative process. So yeah, I'm glad that you're always thinking about that and how it kind of can tie back into maybe one of the next projects that you're working on. I guess we got 5 minutes left here, and once again, thank you so much for doing this. This is so
Oh,
much
my
fun,
pleasure. This has been so fun.
and I hope everyone else has had a great time. Again, this is recorded, and we'll make sure that we have this for everybody to listen and to view down the road. So I can create a video, I'll throw it on YouTube and make sure that everybody gets the link. But just wanted to ask, I know you mentioned that you're working on that abandoned mall series, which
Yes.
sounds fascinating. I'm very excited to see where that goes because like abandoned photos are also some of my favorites. And
Yeah.
there's an amazing subreddit that has a bunch of that. So
Love it.
very much looking forward to that. Are there any other areas within kind of the AI art world that you're looking to explore that you find really interesting and want to explore more? Just kind of
Yeah.
curious for what's next for you.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been working on that mall series for a long time, and I think it's almost done. I need to find a home for it. But in addition to that, one thing that I've just very slowly been dipping my toes into is AI video. When I was in school, I did study filmmaking and made some short films, and I'm a huge movie nerd. I love movies, and the potential of AI video is just like crazy to me. So I've kind of started dabbling and playing with that. I'm part of Runway's Creative Partners program, so they like give me a subscription, and I've been monkeying around in there. So stay tuned. Maybe you'll see some moving image stuff from me soon. I've been posting some little short clips here and there. On Twitter of some things that I've been making. And then, yeah, generally, I'm still not done, and maybe I never will be, sort of investigating girlhood and memories. And so, more to come on that. I'm still working with that a lot in terms of just a theme that's important to me and that I haven't I haven't fully gotten through yet. Um, and one thing I also been playing with just stylistically is, I've done a lot of work that's sort of photographic esque or post photography, or some people call it faux photography, like FAUX. But I've also done a lot of work in AI that's more painterly, and so I've been sort of working on a new. I don't know if it's a series or if there maybe just be some one of ones, or if it'll turn into something else, but sort of blending those things and kind of finding a space between photography and painting, as like a new sort of visual thing that I've been having some fun with. So yeah, those are some various directions and things that I've been working on. And then I have a piece that's going to be part of a group show in New York that I'm really excited about. Stay tuned on that. I know Clown Vamp teased it. There's going to be a show and then some artist talks and panels and stuff in New York during the NFT NYC timeframe in April. So I'll be there for that. So yeah, got a lot of various things percolating.
Yeah, that's exciting. You've got a lot going on, so that's super exciting. We did have one question from the audience from
Oh, great.
Stokel, who is an AI artist that I really love. So, on the topic of going with the raw outputs that AI generates, how
Yeah.
do your planned ideas and those like random surprising moments come together when you're creating? Like, how do you mix the stuff that you're doing on purpose with the vibrant, unexpected things that happen along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a matter of honestly just like iterating and iterating and iterating. So like if I start out with an idea and I'm trying to, create a certain um, mood or a certain like scenario, and something pops up as I'm working with the AI and it's like not what I expected and it's kind of weird, but I'm like, that's interesting. Then I'll just continue to iterate and iterate. And then sometimes I'll get to a place where I'm like, you know what? That thing isn't working. It's going too far in a weird direction. I need to switch gears or like reel it back. Other times that sort of magic moment will happen where I'm like, this is it. Like this has led me to this new place, and it's taken a while, but like now that this is it. This is the final piece, or this is close to the final piece. So yeah, it's a little bit just like um, trial and error, or like pushing and pushing and trying a bunch of different directions and sort of going down the path that like seems right. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes then I'm like, oh, I gotta backtrack. That really went like a wrong way, and I don't like where this is going, and I want to get back to my core idea or whatever. But um, yeah, sometimes I just sort of take that little strange thing or that little mistake that the AI throws me, and I go down that path, and it works. But a lot of times it doesn't. Like, and I think a lot of people who haven't used AI tools, they think it's just like really quick and magic. You want a certain thing, you type in some words, and like you get that thing, and it's really not like that at all. There's a lot of trial and error and iterating and iterating and iterating and blending things together. And I do a lot of things where I'll like start in Mid Journey and then wind up, bringing some of those over into Stable Diffusion or vice versa. So I'll like go between models, or I'll, take things that I made and then blend them with my own photographs, or blend them with pieces I made from another series. Or so there's like, yeah, there's just many different routes you can go, and it honestly can like time can just like evaporate, because all of a sudden you're like, wait, how did hours pass? And it's because you've gone down this like rabbit hole of AI. So that's not a super straightforward answer, but all of it is to say is like, I just keep trying and trying different things, and I just like have this sort of feeling in my gut when something is feels right, or feels like weird in just the right way, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Hopefully that was helpful for the audience as well. I think just staying true to yourself and just allow yourself to kind of go down those weird paths and see where they go. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the answer, but I always think it's worth exploring. So I'm glad that you think the same.
Yeah, and sometimes when I'm going down like a strange path, I'll realize, okay, well, this isn't right for this piece I'm working on, or this idea, or this concept that I'm working on right now. But sometimes I kind of like save that in my brain for later. And luckily, like, the AI software like saves everything for you. And so I'll go back, and then at a later time, and it might become a different project or a different piece, or like evolve. Like I'll use that as a jumping off point for a completely different thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's, it's honestly like, a little bit of a problem of like so many ideas. There's so many things that come up during this conversation with the AI technology that I could do a million projects. So it's a matter of sort of narrowing in on, okay, what are the things that are the most interesting to me? What are the things that are you know uh, themes that are like most important or personal, or just have been nagging at me that I need to get at, and how can I use the AI best to create work around those ideas. If Yeah, I don't know if I'm being clear, but
No, that's super helpful. And yeah, we are all super excited for what's next on the docket for you. And I know you've got that show coming up in New York. So hopefully for those local, they can go check that out. And once again, thank you so much for doing this. This is so much fun walking us through your work, and everyone that came out to the gallery, thanks so much for attending. This has been so much fun for me, and just selfishly, I get to talk to all these awesome artists, and I'm going to continue to do it because I'm having so much fun. So thank you all again, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks again, Danielle.
thank you so much. This was such a pleasure, and I'm totally honored, and I can't wait to listen to your future artist conversations. This was really, really fun.
Amazing. Thanks again, everybody. Have a
Bye.
good one.